3.5 months after the 2024 CrossFit Games with the tragic passing of Lazar Djukic, CrossFit has finally released their statement around what happened and how they're going to move forward. The bar for this statement was very low in terms of the expectation from athletes, from fans, from myself, and somehow they didn't meet the bar. I'm going to do my best to just tell you everything that they've come out with. I'll give you a bit of my interpretation. I'll try not to slag on CrossFit too much, but it's sort of impossible when you hear about what this statement actually is and an accompanying statement from Lazar Djukic's brother, Luka. I do want to point out, though, CrossFit that I'm talking about and CrossFit, the affiliates and the athletes, it's not the same. CrossFit HQ is the ones who run the CrossFit Games. These are the people with the problems. When it comes to CrossFit gyms, CrossFit athletes, I've had virtually exclusively positive experiences with these people, and they're part of the people caught up in the wash. I know there's strongman fans who might be watching this or strength fans who might be watching this with some weird predisposition to not like CrossFit. I think it's phenomenal. I love the people involved in it, but CrossFit HQ is clearly useless. I also want to point out that I'm making these videos and talking about CrossFit because as an athlete in a niche sport of similar size to CrossFit, it is hard to have your voice heard. And sometimes if you try to make your voice heard, you are ruffling the wrong feathers and there can be consequences for that, direct or indirect, where there's nothing that CrossFit could do if I come out and I propagate. Really, I'm just propagating the statement that they want to put out there, which to me is pretty surprising. But let's get on with it. The first point of disappointment was that, quote, the reports of the third-party investigation were reported to our board of directors, and they were not shared in the reports. Presumably, this is for legal reasons. I did read that it was for legal reasons, but I don't remember if I read it from CrossFit or by speculation. So we'll call it speculation. Regardless, if the third-party investigation said that CrossFit did everything that they could to prevent this death, it's likely that they would have put it out there. So we can assume that there is some level of culpability that they don't want to admit to. They, straight after the event, they did say they were going to release the full report. That is something that they said 100% unequivocally. That's what they were going to do. And they didn't lead up to that promise. This is a long list of things that they're saying that they're going to do or that they did, and they lied. They said they talked to Lazar's family to continue. They lied. They said they were going to release the report. They lied. Now, in response to the following release protocols, an aforementioned statement where they won't be releasing the full report, Lazar's brother Luka had this to say on Instagram, quote, "No investigation can reveal anything other than the fact that there was no reaction when it was needed. Shortly after CrossFit Incorporated announced their, quote, third-party investigation, end quote, I was informed by a source that they would not be sharing the results. However, I wanted you to hear this directly from them." Now, not to be misinterpreted, this is not Luka's speculation. This is someone at CrossFit who he has spoken to who has told him this. Quote, "This was merely a let's buy some time move until the community forgets and it's time to cash in on them again." I believe this, to be honest. It's pretty shocking, but based on what they have to say afterwards, I don't see how this is any sort of move other than let a few months pass, let a few competitions go by. Let's see if we can't just sweep this under the rug. He finishes by saying, "The next time you consider signing up for the Open, paying your affiliate fee, or letting a few CrossFit Incorporated oriented media pawns influence you, think carefully about giving your money, power, and time to a company that does not value human life." Definitely a damning statement from the person arguably closest to the situation. Now, here are the points in this released investigation. Number one, there will be a new leadership role for safety at the CrossFit Games. This sounds really good. How could CrossFit mess this up? They then say this person will report to Dave Castro and CEO Don Fowle. I don't know the inner workings of CrossFit as well as the CrossFit athletes themselves, but the PFAA said one of these things that they demanded was that Dave Castro was let go. He is responsible for the programming at the games, and in their opinion, he was culpable for the safety errors in the fallout from the games. He was also contacted multiple times about giving some information in and around that event in particular. And the PFAA released a statement shortly after the games talking about the communication or lack thereof that they were seeking from CrossFit that continuously they were not getting. So the fact that CrossFit is not making any sort of change to the hierarchy, any sort of change to the structure. Oh, that's not good. We'll just have to deal with that. I don't know why it went up. Any sort of change to the structure of executives, really, they're going to stick with the same team. And the person who is now in this new safety advisory role is just going to advise the person who arguably made the error in the first place. I don't know what the correct solution is when it comes to Dave Castro and the CrossFit leadership. But it is very strange if you're making a statement that's you're trying to take some sort of accountability, which doesn't seem like they are. But I would think that they would have some independent pathway, people independent of the people advising the CrossFit Games or creating the CrossFit Games, something to say that this is not going down the exact same pathway that we went down before, but they're almost doubling down on that and saying, basically, we're going to do that and we're going to have one extra person who's going to say what they have to say to the people who are already making the decisions, who will ultimately have the final say. Not a great statement. They'll also be reporting to CEO Don Fowle. But again, I don't know these people on a personal level. They could be good people. They could be bad people. But I know if I made a mistake of that magnitude in competition, that would mean that I came dead last in a contest, i.e. if I didn't do my job. If I came dead last, that means I don't get invited to that contest the next year. That's how jobs work. If you don't do it well, you tend to not have that job anymore. But this principle doesn't seem to apply in this circumstance for one reason or another. Number 2 is to create a CrossFit Games Safety Advisory Board. I'm not sure if this new leadership role for safety is going to be the head of this Safety Advisory Board. But regardless, they said athletes, medical professionals, and safety professionals will be involved. This seems like a good move, but again, it just depends. How is this carried up the chain? This Safety Advisory Board, they said, will be on sites. They will be meeting before events, after events, etc. It is more the application than the actual institution or the inception of this board. You can have many boards that really accomplish nothing, and hopefully this isn't that, but it feels like it is likely going to be that. Number 3, no open water swim events. Tell me you've missed the point without telling me you've missed the point. None of this was about open water swimming in the first place. It was about the safety surrounding open water swimming. So to me, this isn't to say that open water swimming is so dangerous we can't do it. Triathletes do it all the time in droves. It's to say that CrossFit doesn't believe in themselves to create a safe open water swim event, or they're trying just to save face in case something similar happens again. I don't see why you would just eliminate it altogether. I think you could run it safely. I think there have been many proposed solutions on how this could be safe, but this almost feels like this is their way of saying, well, it's so unsafe, we're not going to do it ever again. And that contributed to why this happened in the first place. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Number 4, it says, we'll be more involved with pre-event rehearsals and briefings. Now, during the briefings, it says they're going to be informed of the dangers of the event and how to get help during the event if you need it. That's good in some circumstances, definitely for something like an open water swim. I really hope this doesn't turn into a pandering situation where you're told that a deadlift could hurt your back, and if you hurt your back, you should go get medical attention, or a barbell over your head is a dangerous apparatus that is heavy and could land on your head. That would be infuriating to me if I was a CrossFit athlete. They understand the risks for the most part. The one bit that I don't appreciate is how to get help if you need it. I get it. It is important to understand that, but ultimately the safety should be the responsibility of the organization, not of the athlete. When someone's at a 100% max effort, they're exhausted, they're not really thinking straight. If they're in medical distress, they're really not thinking straight. And so to put that on top of the athlete and say that the athlete is going to be informed how they can get help if they need it, you hope that they're also going to recognize that they should have staff on hand to recognize the help that is required. Now, those 4 points are the beginning. That the last 2 are not anything to do with changing the actual structure of the events. I will note that in those first 4, there's nothing to say they're going to increase the medical staff, to increase the supervision of the athletes, to do anything that actually would have prevented this from happening in the first place, other than not open water swimming. It would have been great if they said, we're going to have X number of trained medical staff per athlete. We're going to have X number of athletes per person who's specifically watching them during the event to see if they are in any sort of duress. None of that was said. They seem to be sticking pretty hard on the volunteer basis, which provides natural difficulties. I can't believe it when I go to something like the Rogue Invitational or Wadapalooza or anything like that. The number of people who just love to give their time to CrossFit, and this is back to the how special that community actually is, and how this is not a representation of them whatsoever. Number 5 is extended mental health support, available to assist athletes and staff experiencing emotional distress, whether they feel impacted by competition pressure, personal issues, or unforeseen emergencies. I mean, come on. During the events, during the CrossFit Games, during the biggest athletic event, you're going to have people there to give mental health support. Like, no one's looking for that, I don't believe. And whilst it might be useful for some people, and you could talk about the pressure and the uncomfortability of the next event coming up or something, I have never seen anything to say that that's going to be a successful strategy. If someone's in emotional distress because you caused it, let's worry about not causing it rather than providing emotional support afterwards. It also has this feeling of pandering again, almost like these kids have gotten very upset over this thing that's not that big of a deal. So in case they throw a fit again, let's make sure that we have some mental health people on hand. No other sport really has this, unless it's potentially a sport with unlimited budget, like some of the pro sports. But the athletes don't. I don't think that this is anything related to the events that happened at all. If you wanted to do this, you could have done this aside and not lump this in with the tragedy that's caused by you. I don't understand how this is related. If the incident didn't occur, people wouldn't need mental health support. So why are you providing mental health support in the same statement that you're trying to talk about how to prevent it? It's almost like if it happens again, you will be able to speak to a professional on site. That one leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Number 6, establishing a CrossFit Athlete Council. This is awesome. This is required. This is the bit that they got right, with one important caveat. The PFAA was established a few years back. Lazar was on the board. Brent Fikowski is one of the people who started this organization and has just retired from the sport to focus more on the athlete welfare and the PFAA. This is a slap in the face to what PFAA was trying to do in the first place. If you look at the communication from PFAA to CrossFit, it was very cut and dry that CrossFit did not want to communicate, that CrossFit did not want to recognize and respect the requests of the PFAA, and they did not want to work with the PFAA. And this is their response. This is a slap in the PFA's face to say, we're going to create our own advisory board and you can kick rocks. So, quote, unlike prior CrossFit councils, they're talking about PFAA, this athlete council will be elected by fellow athletes and will represent athletes from all divisions of competition. We look forward to opening this process up to our athletes to ensure we have a representation chosen by the entire community. We'll communicate additional details about the council soon and intend to have the first athlete council members chosen by early 2025. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It all sounds fine. It all sounds good. But the PFAA has athletes from around the world. From my understanding, they're mostly top-level elite individuals. But the top-level elite individuals is where this starts. It's what drives CrossFit. It's what drives every sport. And it depends how you want to attack this strategically. Would you want to start at the top and get those standards right and pass those down to every other division? Or do you want to have every division involved and try to have things move forward together? Personally, I believe the challenge with having every division lumped in together and having a safety consideration for each is that the safety consideration for each division is not the same. The coordination of a teen athlete might need to be considered more than an elite individual open. The adaptive athletes have a whole host of different safety concerns. The demands that are placed on the open individual athletes are very different. The level of secrecy might be different depending on the level that you're at. Maybe novice competitors can get the events released a little bit earlier so they have time to practice and acclimatize. But regardless, this would have been so much better if they said, we're going to work with the PFAA to do X, Y, and Z. In my conversations with people in the CrossFit world, and not CrossFit commentators, not people sitting in their basements talking about CrossFit, my experience with the actual athletes themselves, I haven't really heard anyone say anything negative about what the PFA is trying to do. If you know Brent Fikowski, if you speak to him, I don't think there's a bone in his body that has this nefarious, I need to control everything. I've never got that feeling at all. In fact, he's going out of his way, going out on a limb, trying to start an organization that may or may not be supported as much as he would like, that may or may not get the job done. But it's sort of one of those things that this is a thing that I'm trying to do good. And if it fails, I'm happy to fail. I'm not putting those words in his mouth. That's how I would feel if I were him. And to invest so much time and energy into trying to make the sport regulated, make the sport safe, have some sort of voice for the athletes is, I mean, to have that sort of neglected is really, really sad. There's also a problem with the CrossFit Athlete Council being chosen by CrossFit. Again, we have conflict of interest here. It should be a third-party organization like the PFAA. The NHL Players Association, the NFL Players Association, the NBA Players Association are not chosen by the NBA or NFL or the other professional bodies, because naturally, if I ran an organization and I said, okay, it's the Mitchell Hooper Pro Athlete League, and there was a problem and there needed to be an athlete council, and I recognize that, of course I would say I will be choosing the athletes, and I'd be choosing the athletes who are my best friends. I'd be choosing the athletes who are not going to cause me a problem. And then I can say, I've consulted this group of people who already agree with me, and lo and behold, they still agree with me. So the implementation of this will be really interesting, but the official communication that they are putting their name behind overwhelmingly is terrible. It's underwhelming, I should say. It is very underwhelming, and it does lack a level of responsibility. It lacks a level of living up to their promise of releasing the full results. And if this is what they're putting their name and their word behind, these processes that happen behind closed doors, who knows what's going to happen? Right now, if I had the time, the energy, the expertise to start an organization that was a rival to CrossFit, what a beautiful time that would be. That anyone listening to this video who has the expertise to undertake that business venture could make a killing, because CrossFit affiliates are going to start dropping off. CrossFit athletes are going to be less interested in going to the games. And the thing is, you'll see these top athletes continue to go, and they probably should, because this is the way that they make their money. This is their income. This is their livelihood, and people shouldn't have no livelihood because of it. But what you'll see is less total participation in the open from people who are ranked 10,000th in the world and want to see if they can get to 9,000th. They'll no longer give in and pay their money, which in today's day and age is harder than ever, to an organization that doesn't seem to care about them as much as they care about it. That's my 2 cents. I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are. Go ahead, pop those down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And hopefully this is the end of the CrossFit saga drama. I feel a level of obligation to comment on it because I can't be reprimanded by CrossFit in any way. And I have a voice with many, many CrossFit fans, athletes who listen to me as well. And thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. Leave a comment down below. And hopefully this saga is over. As per usual, lift heavy, be kind, and we will catch you tomorrow.